Okay, in today's lesson, we're first going to start with a review of fractions. Now, before we start going into division, multiplication, subtraction of fractions, we first have to understand what is a fraction. Well, to understand what a fraction is, instead of using abstract concepts like the numbers that they represent, such as 3 parts out of 4, we can also come to understand that a fraction has a visual representation. Now, what do I mean by visual representation? That was a big vocabulary word that I just used. When I'm talking about visual representation, I just mean we're going to use a drawing. So if you're looking at a fraction the way that we've learned it so far, what this really means is 3 parts out of 4. So you might ask yourself, what does that look like? Well, 3 parts out of 4. First, we have to understand that a fraction is parts of a whole. Okay? Now that might sound really abstract to us right now, but if we take a look at it in terms of an actual drawing, it will start to make more sense. So, here I'm going to use a rectangle because it is an easy shape to draw to help us understand that this is a whole. And the first thing that I have to understand when I am looking at a fraction is which part of these means your parts, the total parts that you are making your shape into, and which part means the total number of shapes that you have. So from your prior knowledge and the assessments that I've seen, I know that you can easily model 3/4 as, we always want to make a whole into equal parts. So I'm going to make this a little bit neater. And we're going to show this as 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. 4 out of 4 pieces is one whole. And here we have 3 of those fourths. So here I'm going to draw in 3/4. Okay? So now we have the basic prior knowledge of what a fraction is and how it is represented in visual form. But what if I wanted to divide one of those fractions? Well, the first thing that we have to know about division, and what makes it so cool when we are using, these are called area models for fractions, is when you're dividing, it basically looks like dividing. Fractions are nothing more than dividing. And if we were to go to the lessons that we've learned so far, if you take a look at what we have, it basically looks like a division sign. And what it literally means in this case is 3 divided by 4. And what we would need to do is take our 3, the 3 then gets divided by the 4. So here we have to set up this step. We have to understand that 4 is larger than 3, and we have to put the 0 in here. We have to understand that we're going to put this over here. 4 times 7 is 28. We have a remainder of 2. We have a 0. And we end up with 75 hundredths. That seems like a lot of work to do. And the problem with that is that when we get to a major test and we have to use multiplication, addition, and division, we have to use multiple strategies. So what we want to do is make it simple. Simple and easy. So let's start with division. Since we know that division means making equal groups, let's first model what equal groups look like. So here, we've already modeled our fraction by having equal groups. Equal means the same. And so in this case, all of our whole was composed into 1, 2, 3, 4 equal sized pieces. And since we have 4 pieces, that is 4/4 or 1 whole. And we can even create 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. And that is one whole if we have 4/4. Okay? But let's look at how we can put this into a division problem. Now that we know how to use an area model and what division actually looks like, so here in the same example is 3/4, which we're going to model as 1, 2, 3. And here's our problem in standard written form. 3/4 divided by 2. Before we can solve that problem, we have to understand what it's actually asking us to do. First, we know how to model. So that is the very first step. We've modeled our 3/4. Okay? So if we're following along with our checklist, we know that we've done the first step. So we are in the first step to actually solving this problem. The next thing is actually understanding what dividing means. And dividing means actually putting things into equal groups. Here we've done that before, but in order for us to do that again, we're dividing it into 2 equal groups. So right now on your paper with me, I want you to copy this. We have one line going right through the middle. And here we have 1 equal group, 2 equal groups. Okay? So here we can clearly see how we've taken 3/4 and we've divided it into 2 equal groups. And when we look at these symbols, sometimes we understand kind of what division means. But if we look at this picture, it's even clearer. What it wants to know is, in each equal group, remember how we talked about how the word each in our word problems often means to divide? In each group, so here is group number 1, and here is group number 2. What do we have? So when we remember that a fraction has composed of a numerator and a denominator, and we know that from prior knowledge, from the assessments that we've done, that this is going to be representing our total parts that we have. When we created our drawing, did we actually change the number of parts that we had? If we can use area model multiplication, we can see that on top we have 1, 2, 3, 4 in this row. And going down we have 2. So that means that we have actually changed our denominator to 8ths. And here, in this group, we have 3/8. So the answer to 3/4 divided by 2 is 3/8. Okay? Let's try another one. Okay. All right. So again, I want you to do this with me, and then the next example I want you to do on your own. Okay? So here, we're going to start with the problem, which is 2/3 divided or split into equal groups of 4. Okay? So the first thing that we're going to do, number 1, is we're going to model our fraction. So step by step, I want you to model this fraction. Easiest if we use. And remember, when we model and we're using fractions which are so closely related to division, we want to make sure that our 3 equal groups, which is what our denominator shows us, are going to look about the same. We have 1, 2, 3 equal groups. And of those, we're going to shade in 2. Okay. Next, we are going to divide, or again, split into equal groups a second time, 4. So we need to make sure that we're careful when we do this, because a lot of times it's easy to look at 4 and draw 4 numbers, or to draw 4 lines, excuse me, but when you do that, you actually give yourself an extra piece. So what you want to do is very slowly look and say,